All right. Hello, happy humans. My name is Kat. In the Kansas City Witch Up community, I go by Hekaterine Knox, which is kind of my author. I'm working on a book. It's my pseudonym. It's also a derivative of Hecate, which is one of my patronesses that I work with on a quasi-regular basis. So I draw my inspiration from her. A little bit about me. I've been a practitioner since I was 18. I'm 45 now, so you do the math because I don't wanna. And I've practiced a little bit of everything, from Celtic Reconstructionist to straight out happy-go-lucky Wicca, to Dianic, a little bit of OTO, you name it. I've probably touched a little bit of it somewhere in my tenure as a pagan. I am teaching this specific module as if you are going to write a Wiccan ritual, because I feel like Wicca is the gateway to everything else that's considered paganism. You can easily drop in on a Wiccan circle and kind of almost always have a clue what's going on, because they're all kind of built the same way. And that's what I enjoy about teaching this particular format. I was, for all disclosure, a second year initiate within Luna Lushede and Elohim Lushede, which are both defunct groups that were part of the Lushede Grove, currently being taught by Vicky B and Ripley, but they're a closed group now. So my perspective is from a Lushede perspective, and I will definitely tell you what is Lushede specific versus what I consider Wiccan generic. So enough about that. Let me go ahead and get into the PowerPoint here. Here we go.
Real quick, I want to interject and ask everyone to be sure to mute for the presentation. And if you have a question, you can post it in the chat, and I will be watching the chat, or you can use the raise hand function as well.
Perfect. All right, so how to construct a Wiccan circle. Hekaterine Kat Knox, 2021. Let's see. Disclaimer. I am teaching this from the Wiccan point of view, and specifically as I was taught while as an initiate within the Lushede tradition. So basically, what is a circle? A magical circle, and this is taken from Wikipedia because I thought it was the most concise answer, is a circle of space marked out by practitioners of some branches of ritual magic, which they generally believe will contain energy and form a sacred space, or will provide them with a form of magical protection, or both. It may be marked physically, drawn in a material like chalk or salt, or merely visualized. Why is that important? Because a circle is seen as having no end or no beginning, and it's also spherical, so it goes above, below, and all the way around you. And well, the next slide answers that question. Think of a circle as a container and a sphere as a shape, all around you. And I can't read my own slide, hold on. There we go. All around you, imagine being in a ball. We refer to it as a circle because when we draw it in the physical plane, a circle is a shape without end and encompasses all around us. We use a circle to contain and amplify our magic. Generally, casting a circle is to provide protection from outside influences. It is not required to use a magical circle during ritual, but it is highly encouraged. And give me just a minute. I'm trying to get the slide to go next. There we go. Okay, so this is basic ritual structure from a variety of different sources that I've gleaned throughout the years. I'll get into more detail after we get through just the basics here. You want to cleanse the ritual space by carrying a representation of the 4 elements around the area in a clockwise movement, or as we call it, desoil, is what I pronounce it, which means with the sun. And so you're going to work with each element one at a time. Generally in the center of the altar is where you're going to have your representation of the Lord and the Lady, if you choose to work with them, or deity in general, or even specific gods and goddesses, and the 4 elements. So you're going to open the altar energies by calling the 4 elements and asking for the presence of deity, however you choose to define it. Using an athame, a sword, or a staff, you're going to draw the magical circle, also in a clockwise movement. So I tend to draw the circle on the outside of the physical bodies of the people in the circle with me. That way it encompasses us inside that magical circle. You're at that point, most traditions will call the quarters or the elements or the watchtowers, however you choose to identify them, and light the individual candles. For the sake of continuity, I call air in the east is yellow, fire in the south is red, water in the west is blue, and earth in the north is green. And then you invoke deity to come down into your ritual. At that point, some people like to do what's called drawing down the moon, but that specifically I've read is more for full moon rituals. This is just for any kind of generic ritual you want. Then you state the intention of the ritual and perform the magical work. This is the most important part of the ritual, and it is very important that you realize it is your intention for the work to be imbued with the energy that you have drawn the magical circle from. So you're going to perform the magical work, and then most people choose to ground after performing their work with cakes and ale. Cakes, cookies, biscuits, whatever. Doesn't have to be ale. I've had groups use actual ale, mead, wine, water, juice. Most things are very, boy, we did at Luchede was things that did not have an allergy quotient to them. And that's to ground your energy back into yourself and into the earth. Then you would thank deity, thank the quarters, release them, and extinguish the quarter candles. Release the magical circle widdershins, which is counterclockwise because you want to let that energy go. And then clean up and offer the leftover libations to the deity somewhere outside. That's basic. So I'm going to get into a little bit more specifics next. This is specifically from my public ritual that I wrote and performed in June of 19 for Letha, following the guidelines of the Luchede Grove. First thing, can everybody just kind of give a thumbs up or just a hello in the chat to make sure that I'm not talking too fast? And Emily, can you let me know?
I will.
Okay. I tend to talk too fast when I'm nervous, so I apologize about that. Okay, so circle creation. This is the physical part of making sure that the circle is drawn around you. You're going to, and this is the way we do it in Luchede. You may pick and choose as you see fit, because as we know, Wicca is not a one-way trip for all. You can do it in a variety of different manners, but this is how I was, quote unquote, taught. You're going to spurge the area, whether it be inside or outside, and you're going to walk the perimeter of the circle with not necessarily a new broom, but with a broom or a besom, and brush away any negative energy spiraling from the center outwards in a counterclockwise motion. And the reason why you're doing it counterclockwise, like I mentioned previously, is because you want to get the energy out. So you do that counterclockwise. In the next step, you're going to pull the energy in. So you're going to do that clockwise. So what we do from here is on the altar, we're going to light the charcoal block, which is a representation of fire. And then we're going to physically draw the circle. Take up the athame, go to the east quarter, pointing the athame at the edge of the circle, and walk walk clockwise while visualizing energy from the athame, creating the sphere of the circle. This point in time, while we're doing that, everybody within the circle chants, "This is a time that is not a time, on a day that is not a day, in a place that is not a place." And that is repeated usually 3 times as the person is cutting or creating the circle around you, behind you. Then we consecrate the circle with water and earth. After coming back to the east quarter, return to the altar, place the salt on the pentacle, take the athame, and put the tip of the athame in the salt. And then you take the vessel and you hold it above your head and you go, "Mother Goddess, bless us as creatures of earth to your service, that we may remember the earth from which our bodies are made." Remove the salt from the pentacle and pick up the water chalice and place it on the pentacle. Take up the athame and put the tip in the water, stating, "Mother Goddess, please bless us as creatures of water to your service, that we may always remember the life-giving waters that flow within and through us." Put some of the salt into the water, stir it 3 times with your finger, hold the chalice up and say, "Great Mother, we honor you." So typically there's 2 people running the circle. So the goddess or the priestess would take the chalice and go to the east quarter, waiting for fire or air, which is invoked by the priest. So blessing air and fire with the chalice on the right side, or when done, place the chalice on the right side of the altar or waiting in the east quadrant. With the athame, put your tip into the incense. "Great Father, bless us as creatures of air to your service, that we may hear the wisdom of the ancients whispered upon the breeze." Move the censer to the pentacle, holding the athame above it. "Great Father, bless us as creatures of fire to your service, that we may always remember the spark of deity that burns within us." Put the incense on the charcoal block, which is already in the censer. Hold the censer up. "Great Father, we honor you." Then those 2 people will anoint, for lack of a better word, the circle with earth and air and fire. No, I'm sorry. Water and earth and fire and air, to make the space sacred and blessed by the Lord and the Lady. Then you return the censer and the chalice to the altar. Nobody else is moving at this point in time, just the 2 people or even the 1 person and a helper who are performing the actual ritual that day. Now here's where your creativity can especially come in. Quarter calls. Like I said, for the sake of ease, we're doing east air, south fire, water west, earth north. And anything that you do vocally, I've put in purple. Any subnotes I've put in yellow. So quarter calls need to have a purpose. And I have always been taught to written them as the direction, So east, north, south, west. The purpose of why you need that elemental there, the reason, and then your request. So you'll see kind of a rhythm in all of my quarter calls that they say essentially the same thing, but they are specialized towards that specific element or elemental. So east, sylphs of the east, lend to us your melodious communication as we celebrate the summer solstice. So there's your direction. Here's your request. Here's the purpose as we celebrate your summer solstice. And then uplift our spirit self so that we may breathe in your messages from the winds. And that's your purpose. It's not always in the same order, but I try to get as close as possible. You light the candle, blessed be, or in some traditions, so mote it be. Salamanders of the South, lend to us your fiery ambition as we celebrate the summer solstice. Connect our life source so that we may see your inspiration in the flames. Blessed be. Undines of the West, lend to us your emotions as we celebrate the summer solstice. Engage our subconscious so we may feel the fluidity of it in our souls. Blessed be. Dryads of the North, lend to us your steadfast grounding as we celebrate the summer solstice. Involve our physical selves so that we may touch your prosperity in the earth. Blessed be. So things that have been called before, you kind of want to keep them on the same level. So like if you're going to call a spring rain in west, you don't want to call a dragon in the south, because those are two very different energies that are going to be competing for space within your circle. There are a lot of correspondences that you can call for each of your directions. You can keep it within the realm of one pantheon or one landmass, or however you see fit. This is where your creativity comes through. And even if you don't think you have a creative bone in your body, this is where some of that comes out. And I happen to like writing, and therefore I love to write ritual. It's to each their own, really. And then deity calls. So to stand in the goddess position is I'm trying to wait, hold on. Oh, yes. To stand in the goddess position is to be like an X. So your feet are about the same width apart as your shoulders. Your arms are raised above your head in a Y motion because you're accepting the goddess energy into you. So you're going to say, great goddess, she who awakens fertility in the earth, be with us now during this lethal ritual. Light the candle on the altar. Blessed be. The God position, you stand with your feet close together. Don't lock your knees. Place your arms in an X over your chest and say, Sun Lord, the fair shining one, he who rides the sun chariot across the sky, be with us now during this lethal ritual. Light the gold candle and blessed be. This is also where your creativity comes in. This is where if you want to call specific deities, you can do so. But once again, it's who, what, where, and why. Who is the god or goddess? What are you asking of them? Where, lethal ritual, and why? I guess I didn't put why in here, but that's one way of doing it. So next, after you've called in the elements and the Lord and the Lady to protect your circle and protect yourselves and to be with you during this. This is where your magical intent comes in. Be it an initiation, a blessing of an item, a divination, etc. This is the time and the place within your raised circle that you work with your intention. For Letha, this 2 years ago almost, I had provided everybody with a bag of stones that all had to do with abundance and building energy. Because when the sun is at its highest point, that's when you're going to ask the Lord for his version of abundance. And so I had a chant. Everybody got a bag of stones. We all held hands. We all chanted the same thing, raising the energy louder and faster as we went, imbued those stones with that energy, and that was our magical working for that ritual. After that, when you're raising energy, especially in a public forum, you're going to want to ground yourself again. So that's where cakes and ale or libation come in. So the dish that the cakes are put on in the ritual is called a pantacle, and is usually a plate with a pentacle drawn on it. That's completely up to you. You don't have to have special anything to do any of this. It's just, once again, your intent. So we're going to put the cakes on the pantacle, place it on the pentacle, and then raise it to the sky and say, to the Lord and Lady, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. You're going to pass that pantacle starting in the east. Everybody takes a cookie off the pantacle as it's going fully around the circle. And you say to your companion to your left, may you never hunger. They reply to you, may you never hunger. And then they go to the left. May you never hunger, etc. Then you're going to have a goblet with ale on the pentacle. Raise it and say to the Lord and Lady, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Now, in public ritual, everybody would have a little Dixie cup, and there would be somebody who pours a little bit of the libation in the Dixie cup so as to not spread germs. But if you are in a ritual by yourself, obviously you don't need to worry about germs, or in a coven setting where you are comfortable with everybody else, you can drink out of one goblet. Most people don't do anything alcoholic, just out of respect for those who are sober or that don't like alcohol. So once again, you're going to take the goblet, you're going to look to the person to your left, may you never thirst. They're going to reply, may you never thirst, and it goes around the circle again. Whatever is left goes back on the altar, and then once the circle is dispersed, those leftover items go to the Lord and Lady outside. This part of it, you don't have to say anything other than may you never hunger, may you never thirst. Those are traditional Wiccan salutations. Once again, Luce Day, we always want to appease not appease, but recognize the Lord and the Lady and have them help us ground ourselves after working magic. So here we go. We're going to do the reverse of what we did first. Stand in the God position and say, Solar Lord, we thank you for your presence. May our desires be heard by you and be blessed. Go if you must, stay if you will, blessed be. Lovely goddess of the sun, we thank you for your presence. Guide our wishes into the sunlight. Go if you must, stay if you will, blessed be. Here's something important to consider. You should not command deity to come and go. You make a request of them to be a part of your circle. So that's why it's very flim-flam when it says, go if you must, stay if you will, because we want them to know that we honor their presence, but we're not requiring them to stay for our own purposes. And the same can be said for the quarter calls. And I kind of squished them all onto one page. Sylphs of the East, we thank you for your presence. Go if you must, stay if you will, blessed be. Salamanders of the South, Undines of the West, and Dryads of the North. Go if you must, stay if you will, blessed be. Now, something else important to note is that you are snuffing the candle, specifically with a candle snuffer if you have it, or because you don't want to blow it out. You blow the candles out. Blowing out the candles will release the energy, and you don't know exactly where it's going. At least this way it's controlled, and you know that the energy can be contained still within your circle. That's what I was taught. And then dispersing the energies of the circle. At this point in time, the Lord and the Lady have dispersed. The elements have dispersed. They may be little pixies or fairies still hanging around. That's normal. Everybody would hold hands and we would repeat this chant. And to this circle we did come with a purpose to act as one. In perfect love and perfect trust, in kind spirit depart we must. Until we circle once again, may the wheel turn as your friend. Merry meet and merry part and merry meet again. And then everybody would squeeze and hug and etc. So another note, at this point, it is customary to either cut the circle or push it towards the boundaries of the sacred space. So before everybody left the circle or during the chant, someone would go behind them and take either the staff, the athame, or the sword and literally cut the circle open. And then you would motion that energy back into the ground. If you are in somebody's sacred space, like at my own covenstead, my home is a constant circle, or is a constant in need of constant protection. So we would take the energy and push it to the boundaries of my property. That way the circle is always there and it's easier to raise next time. And also so that it always protects my house. I know that was rather quick. I'm going to go ahead and take this off of stop share. But at this point in time, I would like to open this up for discussion.
I'm going to go ahead and say, feel free to unmute and ask questions or comments. I giggled a bit during your presentation because this is all very familiar. If you've been to any of the Lucia Day public rituals, they did stop years, a little over a year and a half ago, maybe a little over a year ago. But yeah, it's all very familiar because I've been to those public rituals. So if anyone has questions or comments, please feel free.
I do have, it's kind of a question / comment. I know a guy who showed me casting the circle like you're saying with the athame, but he also talked about how you can cast a circle over another circle. I just wondered if that sounds familiar.
A circle over another circle?
Yeah, like you cast the circle and then, oh no, you cast another circle inside of that circle. Something along those lines. Just wonder if that rings a bell.
So I've seen people cast the circle around the bodies and then cast it over and under, so to be as above and so below. But if you're thinking of, let me try to think. most of the time, the circles that I have been a part of just has the outer circle on the outside of the participants of the circle. I'm not exactly I'm sure what that inner circle would be.
Yeah, he was the only one I ever heard that from. So I just wonder if that was familiar. I don't think it's commonly done.
No, that could be something that's tradition specific.
Okay, yeah.
I think I've seen a double layer circle during a particular ritual, but it was just for that particular, it was an initiation ritual, so it was a particular thing for that. Otherwise, I guess if you're doing something that really needs an extra layer of protection, but that would, I don't know, that's an interesting way to do that I haven't really seen.
You know, and that's something else that I didn't bring up. What if you need to leave your circle? There are a lot of different philosophies on this. The way that we did it in Luchede was you went to your closest quarter altar, and the person manning that altar would literally cut a doorway out of the circle and allow you out, and then seal it, and then cut it and let you back in.
Yep.
But you can't always rely on people who are not accustomed to that to know that. So like during public rituals, we don't always have people, we sometimes have people just wander in and out of the circle, and it's fine. I mean, you really can't stand on pomp and circumstance every single situation when you draw a circle. Just know that etiquette dictates you should go to a quarter, cut your way out, seal it, and then cut your way back in.
Okay. But what if, like, I've never seen this happen though, but what if like you had a circle cast, if you had several people in there, and one or two of those people left the circle more than once? Do you think that's acceptable? Having to keep cutting it open and letting energy leak out?
I honestly have never run into that problem. Generally at public rituals, it's little kids that run in and out, and you don't have to worry about cutting a circle or cutting it open for them. Generally in a closed circle, like say if I were to do one here in my coven stead with just my study mates, we know we're there for a purpose. So unless it's dire, people aren't going to want to leave that energy.
Right. Yeah.
And so I, as the acting HPS, I'd be like, okay, stop it, you know?
Right. Yeah.
and that's something that I would discuss with them outside of the circle. I would like to call them or something and say, hey, what's going on? I noticed your energy was away. What can we do to help? You know, that's just one of those etiquette questions.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think it's always a little different with public ritual in general, just because that's about like predicting what people are going to do. And I think it just generally works differently in public ritual than it does when you're in your own small group.
Yeah.
All right.
Could you go back over the part where you were talking, you're saying this is time that is not time, a place that is not a place. That went really fast. I didn't.
Absolutely. I'm very sorry about that.
That's okay. No, otherwise you're fine.
Okay. I tend to talk too fast. I'm sorry. As you can tell, we're not even half an hour in and I'm done. As they are walking the perimeter of the circle, starting in the east, you go, this is a time that is not a time, on a day that is not a day, in a place that is not a place. This is a time that is not a time, on a day that is not a day, in a place that is not a place. And typically to get around the circle, depending on how many people there are, we do it in threes because, well, you know, pagans like three.
We needed everything in triplicate.
Thank you.
Of course.
Does anyone have any experiences of circle casting they'd like to share?
The one thing I will note is that, like when I am in my own space, I don't necessarily feel the need to always cast a full blown circle. I will, like, obviously right now we're upstairs in my ritual space, as you can see by everything that's on the walls. And this place has already been consecrated for the Lord and the Lady for workings. They're already present here. I have permanent altars set up to each of the quarters, so they are already present here. And I will walk into my sacred space and be like, yo, I'm here, let's work. You don't have to go through the motions every single time. The one thing that I did leave out of the Luchede ritual, which is traditional for that tradition, is that when you call the quarters, you're going to draw the pentagram in that quarter to kind of seal the edges, really. I'll be honest with you, I'm slightly dyslexic. I could never remember which pentagram to draw in which quarter, so I just wipe it out of my ritual altogether.
Oh.
I was never good at those either.
Yeah, I was, well, when we do like Esbits or Sabbats, I usually write the Sabbats and she writes the Esbits, but when we cast circle, I've learned how to do it in an energetic way, and with the idea that I've learned also that you don't necessarily have to have tools, physical tools to do stuff. It's your mind that does the magic.
Absolutely.
And because Zach talks about that a lot. So I decided to try to cast a circle without tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just had to close my eyes and focus. And then I saw this line just kind of explode around the room, and I felt it too.
Sure.
It was very, very powerful. And I went, oh, yeah, you don't need tools to do this.
Your body and your intent is all the tool you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing that I also experienced with that is that after I cast a circle, when I call the quarters, I will sometimes use a wand and sometimes I don't, to draw the invoking pentacle at each quarter
Right.
point, because it like opens the doorway for them to come in. And then when you do the closing pentacle, it's just like saying thanks for coming, we'll see you next time kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Is the way I learned is it's like, you know, you do it before you call the quarter, because if you're saying it first, they can't get in, but until you actually draw that invoking pentacle. It's
Okay.
just kind of they're like, hey, we're here, open the door, you know, kind of thing, and you're already starting, you know. So that's how I was taught. You gotta say draw the pentacle first, and then do the call.
That's a different perspective, and I like that. The other thing I did want to mention too is, along with what Devin said about not necessarily having all the tools, is you don't need all the fancy words either. Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned, I just happen to like to write a lot, so I'm very good at ceremonies. But at one point in time, and I think it was when I was living in California before I came back to Missouri, Luchede actually did a silent ritual where everybody had a general idea of how Luchede rituals ran. And so they just did it basically with hand motions, a little bit of sign language, and they went through the entire ritual and did not even say a single word. And I heard, and from the grapevine, I heard that was a very powerful thing to do. All they had was like water going on in the background or something like that, bells or something.
Was that out at Gaia?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay. I've heard something about that from one of them, and I thought she said they did did that out at Gaia.
Yeah,
Or
it's
they've
possible.
Or they've done more than one.
Right,
Possible.
right.
Like,
Wow. Yeah.
it's amazing the variety.
It froze.
Yeah, Emily, you froze again, unfortunately. You were talking about variety, and then that's all I heard.
Oh man.
There you go.
Okay. Driving me crazy. It's like, it's amazing the variety of ways there are to cast circles in different traditions. And if you experience different ones, it can be an interesting exercise to make note of what's different and what's the same.
Absolutely. I mean, even within the Lashede Grove, at one point in time, there were 3 active covens within the Lashede tradition. And even within those 3 different covens, rituals were all just slightly different because it's all about interpretation and intent. And that really is the most important thing that I can stress, is it's all about intent. Don't need all the fanciness. Just, if you like structure, that's what I hope to provide. But don't think that my way is the only way, because Lord knows I'm wrong more than often than not.
And it is a good base structure. It's like Wiccan ritual has been kind of a skeleton in as far as basis of ritual and building, and especially public ritual in the pagan community since, and at least in the last probably more than 20 years, but it's been just over 20 years that I've been practicing. So yeah, it's kind of that, like you said, is that entry point, and it is that that base structure that tends to, I think we're seeing more variety now in different spaces as far as like ritual structure and types of ritual, which is great. And I love seeing that, because I love seeing the different variety, and I love seeing people exposed to different things. But that understanding that base structure is still really good when you're going out into public spaces in the pagan world, because that's kind of that default that people.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, the last Kansas City Pagan Pride that we were able to have, so that was 19 as well. It had a really good basis of three or four different groups that did ritual that day, and all of them were so different. And that was the whole point, was to show people that we're all the same under the same umbrella, but we've got very different ways of doing things, and it's all okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also gonna ask you, now when you're in the circle, I'm not sure how to bring this forward. Other ways of casting circle, I guess, like when you talk about the athame, going around with the athame or a wand or something like that. What do you think of the idea of doing it with the broomstick, not the bushy end, but the broomstick end, and pointing it outward?
The staff end, of course. Yeah. Yeah, because the besom is a really good representation of both air and earth. And so you've got a little bit of the Lord and the Lady in the besom all together. I think that's another fabulous way to do it. Absolutely.
And I was also wondering about a couple of other ways casting circle is taking a bell. I have a bell with a pentacle on it, and going around with the bell around the ritual to, but I think the sound would raise energy as well in the circle once it's casted with the bell. What do you think of that idea?
I've read books about that as well. Well, I mean, I've seen it in action in California. So bells are quite often used to bring up from my perspective, they're quite useful for bringing up fairies and sprites because they like the little tinkling noise. So it'd be useful in certain instances for sure.
Okay, wow. Yeah, and the other way I was wondering about is taking a candle that corresponds with that particular quarter, and you place it in that direction, and you go around in a circle form, putting each candle of the 4 down to create the circle all the way around. What do you think of that idea? I don't think I explained it very well, but
I don't see why it couldn't work. The way that I have been doing it the last several years is that the candle already sits in the quarter that you're calling from. But I don't see why it couldn't be taken from a altar and then passed around and then put in its final resting place. That just sounds like another good way to do it.
yeah. I just try to think of other ways to cast circle and raise energy and all of that.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, so it keeps it interesting, keeps it fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I literally can verbatim read a Lucchede tradition ritual from my heart because I've done it for so long. But like you, I'm always looking for a new way to do something because I don't want to get stuck in the same holding pattern.
Right.
But I presented this just because it's a good way to start.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Lots of different ways.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions, comments, stories of past experiences or anything like that?
I just wanted to say thanks. I learned a lot.
Yay, that makes me happy.
I'm new, so.
Oh, excellent.
Welcome. Glad you're here.
Oh, another thing that I've noticed, my teacher and I have noticed when I was, we've noticed it numerous times that when we have the circle casted, and it could be 30 degrees outside, we're in our circle and it's warm.
Oh, yes.
And then when you open the circle at the end, you're cold again because you're still indoors. I always found that to be a fascinating idea.
Well, you think that, what you're doing is you're putting your energy out there to make a sphere. And so anything that is contained within that sphere, which is why I don't believe in blowing out candles. That's why you need to stuff them, because
Right.
you're blowing that energy outside of that protective sphere. And so when you have common energies working towards one goal, man, I don't like wearing cloaks. If I wasn't so body conscious, I would be all about sky-clad rituals, but
Oh.
I have to take off layers when we're working real strongly on a specific intent in a circle. So yeah, absolutely.
And especially if you're doing Reiki within a circle as well, energy work gets even hotter. Yeah. And I was like, man, it's really getting hot in here. Is your heater up full blast or something? She goes like, no, we're in the circle, raising energy. We got the energy work going, and I started figuring it. It didn't take me long to figure it out though, but what took me the longest to figure out was how to actually cast the circle. It took me a long time to figure out how to do, and I had to keep practicing and practicing and practicing.
And that is one thing that was nice about being in a teaching coven for me, is that one of my goals in order to initiate to the next level was I had to walk into a room and tell whether or not a circle has been cast in that room or not, whether or not I could feel the energies as to whether or not the circle had been cast.
Wow.
So that depending, I mean, everybody has good days and bad days, and there were some days when you could walk into that room and the energy was electric, And then
Mhm.
you're like, okay, is that me? Or is that really what's going on? But that was just a really good way to gauge, how you view the energies in the world around you.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
The first circle I cast, I wanted to do some work inside of it, and so I needed to have things with me. And what I've learned is that I really need to have a good list of the things I need to have with me. Because once I was in my circle and I was doing my, oh no, there's
Yep.
something I forgot. And I did the thing, I opened an entry and went out and got my thing. And no sooner had I gotten back into my circle and I forgot another thing. So it's really important to have all of your things that you want to have with you to do your work while you're in your circle. If you need things, make that list so you don't have to keep.
Yes, I agree. So when I was writing rituals for Elohim Lushede, we had a document on the shared drive that we all had that was a basic circle creation. And you had to fill in the blanks essentially. And the very first section was like, what tools do you need to do this working? I mean, you literally listed everything like a lighter, charcoal blocks, incense, snuffers, tools, clothing, cakes and ale. I mean, you listed everything out. And then that way, whoever's working with you can help you get all those things together and hopefully not have to cut your way out of a circle.
And not just magical tools, mundane tools too.
Absolutely.
If you're doing some knot work and you have this ball of yarn, remember the scissors too. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna need them. It's kind of
I
like
needed a pin.
yeah.
Oh.
You need a pen.
Mhm.
Funny.
Just a
Good thing
pen.
to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had another question that left my head though.
Uh-oh.
I'm trying to capture it again. Oh yeah. When you cast circle and then you call in deity, and you're talking about the summer solstice in your calls you were demonstrating. Sometimes at summer solstice, I'll imitate the horn god,
Mhm.
and sometimes that ritual I will cast circle, and I will have my antlers on. They're fake antlers though, and my cape and everything. And so I'm standing there in the circle, and I feel like the horn god has actually entered the circle and has actually entered my body during that moment.
Mhm.
And that's when I start to feel warm
Mhm.
inside the circle. I mean, have you ever had anyone imitate the horn god and channel the horn god with horns on?
Actually, my first high priest had a full headdress of a stag that he wore for high rituals, for all the major Sabbats when he was the high priest in charge of the Sabbats. So in that particular tradition, as an initiate, you were encouraged to, I can't think of the word right now, encouraged to channel a god or goddess in a ritual setting.
Yeah.
I don't always feel like the goddess has entered me when
Mhm.
I am doing ritual, but there are some days when I have absolutely no control over what comes out of my mouth because it's not me.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wow, yeah. Because actually, on a couple of occasions, I have felt the horn god actually enter my body when I put the horns on. So I didn't feel like I was in my body. I felt like something else was there.
Yeah.
And I knew it was the horn god for sure, definitely. And I just kind of went like, I feel different. What's wrong with me? You know, and it was the horn guy. That's what it was.
That's I missed part of that because my internet is awful. So but I have that's something that can be practiced and mastered. It's a whole other level thing. I've heard it called drawing down, channeling. I think it's a similar practice as being written in some African traditions, is what they call it. Although it's a little different because their gods work differently, and spirits. They're just. I mean, I'm sure it varies a bit with each deity, but I have seen people do that. Sometimes the deity can speak through them. Sometimes they don't. It depends. The first time I saw that was the first coven I was ever in when I was still in Colombia. The high priest, he was, to kind of set the scene here. He was kind of a bigger guy and had like salt and pepper hair and a beard. And had this very much like, I want to say dad energy in a way, but it's kind of everyone's dad in a way. But he drew down the Dagda.
Oh,
which is very appropriate for like who he was, and it was his, you know, one of his patrons anyway. But it's hard to describe that he still looked like him, but different.
yep.
Looked slightly different. It was very strange, and it was a really impactful experience early on, in my practice. So yeah, it's a thing that can be done. It's not. Some people have more of a talent for it than others, but it can be practiced. And it's very, yeah, it's definitely more advanced thing, I guess. And again, some people just have more of a natural talent for it. It depends on who you are. So
I agree. And that's all why you need to draw a protective circle, because sometimes when you're inviting a god or a goddess into you, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So you need that protection around you.
yes.
Yeah. I keep forgetting that part. You definitely have to draw, to keep out unwanted forces,
Yep.
energies, and all that. Yeah. I was wondering, when you were talking earlier about the purpose, were you referring to the purpose of the quarter call or the deity, or what were you aiming the purpose at? I forgot that part.
So when you're calling a quarter, I like to inform them of why you need them there.
Okay. Yeah.
Purpose of their visit.
Mm-hmm.
When referring to the actual magical intent,
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to have your purpose or your intention fully lined out. That way you can narrow down the energies that you need to draw upon.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because my teacher's always saying intent is everything.
Mhm.
And and if you're calling something in and you don't have a purpose for it, then what's the point?
Very much so.
And at the beginning, I get mad, and I finally like, okay, wait a minute. There's a reason for why she's saying this to me.
Yeah.
And I would feel like, okay, you got, I would feel kind of dumb at first, but then, as I kept experiencing and with her, and she taking me through rituals, I wasn't allowed to do ritual on my own for the first year. I was supposed to be under her guidance specifically. And so I finally started figuring out what she was saying. You got to have intent for everything. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yep.
And that made a lot of sense after the first year or so.
Well, and everybody walks that educational path a little bit differently too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The first group that I was associated with, the Celtic Reconstructionists, man, they threw your feet to the fire the very first year. Whereas with Luchede, things that I had experienced in my first year with the Celts, I wasn't supposed to experience until year 3 or 4 with Luchede.
Ooh.
So it really, your educational path can be varied extremely.
Wow. Wow, that's cool. Yeah. Wow. That other question so hasn't come back to my head yet.
Oh,
I'm just waiting for that question to come back. Oh, but I do believe learning early on that if you got a circle casted and you're in the middle of ritual and your cats are walking in and out, that doesn't break the circle. It doesn't punch holes in it. They go in and out as much as they want.
yeah, cats carry their own energy. They're part of the other world anyway.
They are. They are. My cat sees, especially my female, she sees all kinds of stuff I don't see. But
Oh yeah.
I used to see fairies, flying around my altar at night. And I see these little bubbles moving back and forth around my altar. And when I didn't see them, but I could feel their presence, my female would be looking at something very specific that I couldn't see.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So.
Yeah, my first black cat I ever had living outside of my parents' house was very interested when I was doing tarot card readings.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was my familiar through and through.
Yeah, my male likes to lay on top of my book shadows.
Yeah.
So I have it opened up and I put stuff in there and working on stuff. He'll lay across it.
So Rebecca, when you say you're new, are you new to the area? Are you new to this path?
To this path.
Excellent.
That's what I was going to ask. Where would you meet besides, I guess you guys mentioned the Pagan festival, but where would you meet, like-minded people to get, some face-to-face with different traditions? Is there like a church or whatever?
Well, there's a lot of different places. There's Gaia Community, which actually is a Unitarian church.
Okay.
They're located at Equal Minded Cafe, which is on Troost in like 35th.
Okay.
You can always go to Aquarius and see if there are any groups there that are putting out flyers and stuff. Now, normally, and sorry if I'm stepping on your toes, Emily,
You're fine.
normally this group is held once a month at Aquarius, but because of COVID, nobody's getting together face to face much right now.
Right. Hoping that will change soon.
Let's hope. Yeah.
We're ready to go back. So
Absolutely. Now I know some of the coffee covens are still getting together face to face.
no, none of ours are. Ours are
okay.
except the 2 Zoom coffee covens.
Oh, okay.
And those are more this is like this event, the main event is always more of like a class workshop type structure usually. The coffee covens are much more social. Socializing, chit chat. A lot of times they'll have a topic and discussion and stuff, but there's a daytime one that is on the first 2.
Hold on, she cut out. So if you go to the Facebook group, the Kansas City Witches Meetup Facebook group, those coffee covens are listed in one of the pinned notes at the top of the page.
Okay. So that's what this is, right?
This is the main event.
Yeah, this is considered the main event. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But I mean, honestly, even just going out to Camp Gaia and on one of their volunteer weekends and just putting in time cleaning up the facility, you meet a really lot of awesome people out there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Of
Do you
course.
check on your requirements right now? Some of their weekends you have to sign up for Gaia as right now. Check with the on their website for the requirements. I know they've had COVID restrictions as well.
Right. Okay.
It's kind of made things a little more difficult for everyone. So
yeah, this is last year has been really weird when trying to educate people on where they can go and who they can see and what they can do. So Emily's done a real good job with trying to keep everything going on a monthly basis. I'll tell you that much.
Thank you.
I just, this is the first time I've actually had time to do it, so I'm glad.
Are you,
didn't
did you,
I didn't even know about the libation part. Like, I've never heard that before. The cake nail
Yep.
in the circle.
Yeah, that's not so very Luchede specific. It's very Wiccan.
Is
Very
it?
Wiccan specific, yeah.
Okay.
Because I've done that in other Wiccan circles in
Mhm.
the last 20 whatever years.
And sometimes it depends. I mean, everything is going to depend on the ritual. I've done rituals without it. I've done rituals with it. Yeah, different things do it different way, but food and drink are very grounding.
Mhm.
So they're good for towards the end. And there's also most things I do with that involved some sort of deity or spirit or entity. We make offerings to them.
Yeah.
Group I'm working with now, we don't really have a ritual structure. It depends on what we're doing. Sometimes it's really last minute, off the cuff, which is awesome. It's a lot of fun. But we usually have wine offerings for most entities, unless that's a thing that that entity would not want. But generally, the things we work with kind of like wine, so it works really well for an offering.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't know if you found us through the meetup.com page or Facebook. You can find all of our events on our public Facebook page is how I publish them. I'm not always great at sharing the coffee covens to the group. I try sometimes and it doesn't always. I get distracted or busy and this doesn't happen. But
No, not you.
what? Shocking. But if you follow the public page and look in the events tab, there's updated events on there. They are also going to be updated on the meetup.com page. And if you are in the Facebook group, there is a list of local stores. Covers both the entire KC metro area and Lawrence. We also have a list of recommended books, podcasts, and some YouTube channels.
Okay.
I think those are the major things I've got to.
Yep.
I never had YouTube channels. Oh,
So,
wow.
and there's a lot of podcasts on there. There's a couple local podcasts that are pretty good about different things, and they're fun to listen to because I'm like, I know these people. I feel like I'm having a conversation, but I can't respond. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that's good information. And if you ever have a question about anything, you can always post that in the group and you'll probably get a multitude of answers.
Yeah, just don't be like, I'm sad and lonely and don't have any friends.
We're all that right now.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. We're all sad and lonely right now.
We try to keep the group on topic. So if it's, witchcraft questions, of course, always welcome. So
Great.
What say you, Emily?
does anyone else have any other questions or anything?
I think.
I do think I'm going to go ahead and stop recording because I think we're pretty well at the end of that. So we will stop.